U.S. Congressman Steve King's a Republican from Iowa. Let me ask you, Congressman King, thank you for joining us. Let me go over some highlights of the McConnell plan we've been talking about. It essentially frees the debt ceiling from the deficit fight. As you know, if enacted, President Obama would be able to ask for $2.5 trillion over the next year in 3 installments. As long as he offers up spending cuts, Congress could then vote against raising the debt limit, but Obama would have veto power, of course. You're opposed to that. Why, sir?
Well, I am, because it passes the congressional responsibility. In fact, that's in Article 1, Section 8. It passes a congressional responsibility over to the president, and it puts him in the position to veto the objections of Congress about raising the debt ceiling. So it sets the scenario by which it requires a supermajority to say no to a debt ceiling. Right now, it requires a simple majority to say no to a debt ceiling, and that is our constitutional obligation. We shouldn't pass it off to the president. Okay. I've said that puts the fox in the henhouse.
Okay, Republican Congressman Joe Walsh of Illinois, a Tea Partier, went after the president today, calling him a liar. In a video message today, let's watch what he had to say.
President Obama, quit lying. You know darn well that if August 2nd comes and goes, there's plenty of money to pay off our debt and cover all of our Social Security obligations. And you also know that you and only you have the discretion to make those payments. But have you no shame, sir? In 3 short years, you've bankrupted this country and destroyed job creation. You're either in over your head, you don't understand what makes this country great, or you're hell-bent in turning us into some European big government wasteland.
European big government wasteland. What does that mean exactly, that kind of a charge, sir?
Well, I think that's a bold statement on the part of Joe, and it's all right for him to play a little hardball with the president.
Well, what's European wasteland? What are we talking about, European wasteland? And by the way, do you agree with him that the government is not going to go into default in early August if you don't pass a debt ceiling? Do you agree with him on that?
First, the wasteland part of this thing, we can see it across the states like Pennsylvania and Ohio and in other states. Michigan would be another. We haven't kept our investment. There's not the optimism for the capital investment. Money's sitting on the sidelines. So where I stand on this is what I think the president may well, and he did yesterday, implied the threat that senior citizens might not get their Social Security checks. He said, eat your peas, and we can't guarantee our veterans' pension payments or our Social Security checks coming in. I think what I've done today with Michelle Bachmann and Louis Gohmert introducing the Promises Act, it says, and it directs this, that we pay our military first. They're in uniform, their lives are on the line, and their families are living paycheck to military paycheck, and they become a political pawn instead. They should be guaranteed to be paid first for all time, and we need to service our debt, and that needs to also be guaranteed for all time. That consumes right now about 15.2% of our revenue stream before you touch the part that we're borrowing. So we can do this, and Social Security needs to be paid, as does the military. And so that's what we're trying to do, is to lend some confidence to the markets.
Let me get your statement. You don't believe we go into default. You believe that Geithner's lying, the president's lying, McConnell's wrong, everybody in the country is worried about this, but you have some superior knowledge. What basis do you have for your judgment? Where do you get the new information from?
I do have superior knowledge. Thanks for recognizing it. I have watched this come out of the White House, and I've watched this transition. I've listened to the administration, the executives that are part of this administration. Many of them will say what the president wants them to say. You have to put that through a filter before you can figure out what the truth is. That's not a mystery. It's not unique knowledge, but it's common knowledge.
Jack Lew, the OMB director, the Treasury Secretary, everyone around the president, the business community that's now scared to death, Tom Donahue, head of the U.S. Chamber, all those people are lying, and you've got the truth. You and Bachmann have the truth.
Here's what I'll tell you is that if you look at the Joint Chiefs of Staff who shifted their position on don't ask, don't tell, you can't convince me that they actually changed their mind. Their commander-in-chief changed their mind, just like he changes the mind of his cabinet. So when you listen to the cabinet, read through the tea leaves and think about what's the process here. If the president is going to decide who he's going to pay with the 58% of our current expenditures that's coming in revenue stream, if he won't take the oath that he'll pay the troops first and service our debt second, then he is using the threat of a financial calamity to try to get his debt ceiling increased.
I'm just asking you, do you believe the United States goes into default if Congress doesn't act in the next week or so?
If they pass my bill, no. If the president honors the theme of my bill, no.
So the United States doesn't, if we don't pass the debt ceiling, you don't worry about that?
I think that we have plenty of money to service our debt, but the message that's going out is creating unstable markets today because they're beginning to wonder if the president will or will not service the debt, and it should not be his discretion. Congress should put the bill on his desk.
You have just compared, sir, the decision over policy, don't ask, don't tell, where the President of the United States, who is also Commander-in-Chief under our Constitution, has made a policy judgment to get rid of it, and he's supported by his cabinet and his Joint Chiefs. You're comparing that to an objective statement that we face default if we don't pass a debt ceiling. That's a screwy comparison. One has to do with policy, one has to do with information and knowledge.
And so do the people I'm dealing with. They understand that. They know that when you get a new Commander-in-Chief, the American citizens who will select the next president of the United States who elected the majority in the United States House of Representatives.
So you're polling in your district to find out whether the United States goes into default or not at the end of this month. It's your district that's telling you this information. They know what's going to happen with the international and economic situation.
I know this is a revelation, but I have an independent judgment as well. And they asked me to use that independent judgment. It comes from a long experience of dealing politically and in business and raising a family and being an American citizen, just like the independent judgment of my constituents.
What does raising a family teach you about international finance?
Me to use independent judgment.
Where do you get a knowledge? Where does knowledge about international finance derive from raising a family? What's the connection?
It's not my only source of information is raising my children. There are many other sources of information, and I gather that just like you do. I mean, you seem to have an independent judgment to be my critic, so I could challenge you the same way.
Well, I would ask you, do you trust the Wall Street Journal? Do you trust the Wall Street Journal? Do you trust the New York Times?
I read the Wall Street Journal. I sometimes read the New York Times. I don't really trust. I don't trust the words of any source. You've got to put that all together.
Do you trust the U.S. Chamber of Commerce? Do you trust the major corporations when they say we're in trouble here if we don't pass the debt ceiling? Do you trust any of these organizations?
I sit in my office day by day doing hours of meetings challenging all of those entities that you're talking about in one way or another. It's not all at once, individually. I've got to put together my own independent prudential judgment.
Okay. I accept you're a U.S. Congressman and you have the authority to make this judgment. Let me just ask you, cite one international expert that says we don't have a problem if we don't pass the debt ceiling. Just cite one that you have trust in.
Listen, I have
just one you have trust in.
I don't need to go to an international expert. We don't have an international law, and we don't have an international financial institution here. It's just affected by international finances. So my job is this: to try to hold our markets together.
But one U.S. citizen you trust on this issue, who's an expert in international finance.
The bill that I introduced today is the bill that adds stability to our international financial markets, and find one who will disagree with that. That's what I challenge you to do.
Okay,
so basically, agree that if we guarantee we're going to service our debt, it'll be more stability, and every international expert will tell you that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, U.S. Congressman.